Good afternoon, everyone. The media is preparing you for higher food prices from now on. The culprit will be El Nino. They're already setting that it's not going to go away as quickly. So any damage on food crops globally can be blamed on El Nino for the next 2 to 3 years without even having to consider solar hibernation events. Case in point, reduced corn production in Heilongjiang, Liaoning, northern China blamed on drought, but in fact cold as well. Mention El Nino. Australia, forecast reduction in wheat crop. Oh, record cold there this year, but they're blaming it on El Nino. Add into this record U.S. corn demand for the year. And taking a look at the futures market, as you can see, everything's green. Up, up, up we go. Article I wanted to reference first here comes from the China Daily Asia Weekly publication. It caught my eye right away because that first paragraph, when El Nino returns, just details food price rises. Now, what's the El Nino? Take a look here at the satellite picture of the warming Pacific Ocean. You can see this year is forecast to be a bit more intense than the 1997 El Nino. And as we go forward into the publication, it pounces right away and says El Nino will not go away quickly. For me, that means the media can now use this as a reference for every time there's any type of cold weather event, and they don't even have to mention solar hibernation. They can keep citing El Nino, El Nino. Interestingly enough, though, they did talk about Southeast Asia coffee production, both Arabica as well as Robusta beans, about 50,000 ton reduction out of Indonesia, 40,000 tons Vietnam. Crude palm oil as well. Palm oil expected effect of 15 to 30% reduction in the next year to 2 years. The article does continue and starts talking about why there's a drought in Heilongjiang, Liaoning, northern China. Corn production is being affected. And by affected, this is an exact image of what the ears of corn look like. Interesting though, July hit a new drought record since 1951. That has gone through 2 severe El Nino phases since that time, yet the El Nino has not fully kicked in yet, but they're blaming it already on the drought. This was forecast in a solar minimum because during the collapse of several Chinese dynasties over history, these areas have dried out every single time. Quick look at where the corn production is in China. It's being affected by cold. Of course, there have to be other excuses given for crop loss production. Anything outside solar minimum will be mentioned to try to distract and push you away from anything out of your own control. They cannot allow solar minimum of global cooling effects from the sun to be associated with any of this. So until the very last moment when you're still starving, wondering why there's no food, they'll still be yapping away that it had something to do with CO2 or warming or some type of El Nino event. They'll never actually tell you this is happening. The China Ag Web also continually talks about the drought in Liaoning. And if you're looking top right up there in Heilongjiang, you'll see that light green area. That's exactly where the drought is at. And I'll take you back just a single year. China drought to shrink corn harvest for the first time since 2009. That was last year, about the same time here, August 8th, a year ago. Yet this time they're trying to cite it again on El Nino, but El Nino was not last year. So what caused the drought to start and gain such severity that it affected and dropped production? The solar minimum actually makes more sense than any El Nino drying patterns that have occurred. Currently, drinking water supplies are also being affected, about 250,000 people. This was a reservoir here, what it looks like. Headlines across China reading, drought worst in 63 years. Here's a map of where the soybeans are planted. There's sort of overlap in seasons there. What's funny though, another article from the China Daily says food supplies are secure from El Nino impact. Yet all the previous articles we saw said there's drought impact from El Nino. So you surely cannot count on the Chinese media to tell the truth. They're already flip-flopping between what's causing or what's not causing already. But what they did forget was up in Harbin, which is the same exact area, they had record cold, and this place is cold in China. It is one of the coldest places in China, but they were setting records this last year. As well as Shanghai. Oh, they forget that there's cooling down there too, the coldest in 142 years. And if you're wondering about corn imports from China, here we go. Remember that corn drought in 2009 article I referenced a couple slides ago? When they had that drought, they had to find secondary sources for corn import in China. As you can see, all the imports were mainly 99% from the United States. As well with the droughts, they had to look for increased wheat imports. Currently, almost 70% comes from Australia. Now, these are the same areas that are going to have difficulty growing food in the future as well. The United States will be impacted, Canada will be impacted, Russia will be impacted, Northern Europe, and Australia is also affected right now with their wheat production. So where's it going to leave China in the future? You might ask yourself, maybe that's why there's such a deflection in the Chinese media trying to explain away why corn and wheat production's not as high as it could be. Now, noticing that the U.S. supplies most of the corn imports for China, we take a look at record U.S. corn demand expected in 2015 and 16. Now, digging down into the article, they talk about there was a decrease of corn production, and they only give you two factors: lower planted area and yield. Lower planted area was because it was so cold and so rainy that they couldn't get their machines into the fields. And the yield was affected because it was so cold that the plants were actually affected. Everything was stunted in the fields from either too much moisture or too cold of conditions. But they don't even mention this, again, hiding it in plain sight in the media. And another page in AgWeb, same thing. Record U.S. corn demand expected, but there was a decrease from last year of worldwide corn production. Again, the same exact reasons. Too much cold, too much rain, but they don't tell you this. They just say there was a decrease. And of course, when there's a decrease and there's more demand, here's our futures prices up, up, up. And if you noticed also, China imports wheat 69% from Australia. Here we go again. El Nino is going to have a significant impact on wheat yields in Australia. This is what the cold temperatures are looking like in Australia right now. El Nino hurts Australian wheat, clouding the outlook for Australian grains. I'm going to take you in the Wayback Machine. I'm going to put 50 cents into the time machine and drop you back to 2014 in Mali. As you can see, the red area, that's where we're going in Australia. 2014, severe damage due to frost in the grain crops in Southeast Australia. Wait a second, that was last year. Drought conditions creeping in last year. Here's the area in the blue. That was all the affected wheat production from too much cold and too much drought last year. There was no El Nino. That was a solar minimum effect. I had said that it would increase in the losses from this point forward in this exact area, and Australian wheat production and exports would be down. Now, if you notice right over in the related articles on the right, in the red there, Australia cuts wheat exports to 5-year low. That was last year. They're going to have less production this year, and if it is equivalent with last year, and those effects of reduced exports will directly affect China. That cold weather also in Australia is still going to affect this year. Lupine, last year there was a 90% loss. You know, this year, look at this. This is the conditions right now. Kangaroos bouncing through the snow in the vineyards. It's the coldest first week of August for decades in Australia in the south. In the central as well. It's been record cold everywhere in that country. Look at this. This is near Brisbane. Snow. That blue is deep snow. See those tropical plants everywhere? Those are covered in snow. It's not just Australia, New Zealand. Record cold across there. Record snows this year too. South Africa, record snows. I've shown you a couple examples of cold weather events affecting agricultural production, yet the media is going to try to keep saying it's El Nino. This is the second year it's happening. It's becoming a pattern. It's not a one-time off event or a couple-year event with El Nino. This is going to intensify, especially when El Nino stops, because that's actually some heating in the oceans. When El Nino stops, the true cooling begins. So the winter of 2017 and 18, there is going to be a significant cooling on our planet. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of the video. I'm going to keep this type of information coming to you. I have a lot of viewers asking me about commodities plays and where cold's going to affect our global grains. Where is it going to get colder? How will your life be affected from now on? Make sure to subscribe to my channel, Adapt 2030, and I will let you know to the best of my ability.